What's up, everybody? Welcome in to a 17th straight franchise worst loss in a row streak. That didn't word very correctly, but y'all know what I'm trying to say. The Spurs have now lost 17 straight games, which is the worst in franchise history, worse than last season. Just taking an absolute dump on my preseason prediction, Ethan. I've been very humbled here to start the
Mm.
season.
Yeah, I think we all have. I, even I was a little more. I don't even want to say realistic, but tempered with my expectations for the season. Jude, I think I guessed 11-13 was my prediction, and this is looking a lot worse than even that. I think accumulatively between us, the Pistons, and the Wizards, we have one win in the last 53 total games or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not looking good for any of those teams, but especially for us because we have to watch these games, Jude, unfortunately.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Ethan. I think Gorilla in two different
Oh,
gorillas here. For
mm,
those of you guys who are listening on podcast, go check this out on YouTube. He says, once this post game reaction is finished, we should all agree to never, all caps, ever mention this game again. And I agree.
yeah, I can sign on for that, Jude, as well.
Well, I'm about to pull up the box score here, Ethan, because we're going to go through the game flow in just a second because there's
Mm,
really not too much else to talk about other than the fact that this was one of the worst games I've watched all season, not just from the Spurs perspective, but just in general. Like even
hmm
other NBA games that I've turned on, obviously those are national TV, so those are kind of going to be better. But there's still been some blowouts here and there. This was even a close game for most of it, and it was still just one of the worst games I've watched all season because both teams couldn't buy a shot to save their life. There was a point in the fourth quarter where I think Shetty missed a shot bad on a brick, and the Rockets
hmm
broadcasters were like, "Man, there's been a lot of bricks tonight." And as soon as they said that, they made sure to mention, and that's on both sides. So when the Rockets
hmm
broadcasters in their biggest rivalry, and they weren't really not saying that they're super disrespectful. I was kind of noticing when I was listening to them, I was like, I kind of like these guys
Yeah, they were
better
nice.
than some other guys I listen to, which is surprising because it's the Rockets. But that aside, their biggest rival, even they're admitting yeah, both teams have been shooting awful tonight. And that kind of ties into our last post game, Ethan, before we get into the game flow, is, in the Minnesota game, we felt like when these teams are playing bad games, that's when the Spurs teams got to catch them.
hmm
Instead, we kind of just one-upped them in being bad tonight.
Yeah,
I
we're
hate
like,
to put it that way. Like I'm thinking about players hearing that and stuff, but it's the only way to describe it. Like
hmm Yeah, you're
it's
supposed to catch teams slipping, but instead we're literally descending even lower than they are. Like, oh, you're gonna shoot 30% from three? That's kind of bad, but you know what we're gonna do, G? We're gonna shoot 12% from three. That's how we're gonna respond.
Victor Wembanyama in the comments says, I'd put it up, but I don't want to cover our faces. He says, we need to stop shooting threes, all caps, until we
Oh,
strayed for Steph Curry. Wait, that'll
Jesus.
never happen. So stop shooting threes. And the reason I bring up that comment is because the Spurs went a just on fire, dazzling, beautiful 5 for 41 from three tonight.
Jesus.
That 12.2%, Ethan, that's top tier.
Yeah, it was really difficult. And I wrote down in my first quarter notes 1 for 11 from three to start. And I wrote that down because I thought to myself, oh, we're gonna turn it around. But we really didn't, Jude. It got worse.
Yes, it did, Ethan. So let's just jump into this thing. So obviously, the first quarter, even though the
Mm,
Spurs did come out with a lead there, that was another ugly quarter. Same theme here. Let me pull up my notes, but I know it just kind of started with a lot of people missing open shots. I believe Keldon went 0 for 3 or 0 for 4, all wide open looks from three in the first quarter. He went 0 for 9 from the game overall, 3 for 14. Um, Ugly shooting start for both teams. The first time out, there weren't a lot of timeouts because of that ugly start, and Ime and Pop kind of both saw what was happening. So the first time out didn't come until 4 minutes, and there were only 23 points in total scored in the quarter at that point. So that's 8 minutes into the quarter, and it's 12-11. So that'll give you an example of how bad the shooting was tonight. And literally the last thing that I had written down for this quarter, Ethan, was ugly quarter, comma, Spurs hit one more shot. That's literally the way that I summed it up. I know at this point it was still early in the game, so I did have one kind of positive thing that I wrote down. Obviously, in hindsight, there's really nothing positive to take away from this game. But the one thing I did have written down in the first quarter is I kind of like the Trey Jones, Doug McDermott, Shetty, Julian Champagny, Zach lineup. You know, it was basically just two kind of playmakers out there with a bunch of shooters. Now, we didn't see that for the rest of the game, and I don't really know if that would be effective in a different situation, but just since we're going through the first quarter notes, that was something else that I had written down. And I kind of did like the idea of, you know, Zach and Trey being playmakers just surrounded by shooters. And obviously Shetty can put the ball on the floor as well. But again, there's not really too much positive to take away from this game. What do you think of the first quarter?
I pretty much had the same notes, Jude. Really ugly start in that first quarter for both teams. Only silver lining positive comment I had was defensive rotations with the starting unit was actually pretty good. I felt it, we had nice hustle. We were getting to our guys quickly. I don't know if I want to write off the Rockets as purely a bad shooting night for them. It also at times felt like we have improved defensively somewhat. Now, there's still obviously a lot of mistakes, a lot of miscommunications, but you have to search for that positive, and I think that may have been the only thing to take from this game.
Well, and to that point, as much as it is hard to take positives from this game, like 4 steals from Keldon tonight, 2
Hmm.
from Trey, really it could have been more than that for Trey. He was being a pest in that third quarter, not to jump ahead too much, but that was 1 point on the stat sheet and 5 blocks for Wemby as well. Those were 2 areas where we were able to create turnovers because of making more plays than we normally do, you know, having hands in passing lanes and at the
Hmm.
rim, of course, with Wemby.
Yeah, and it does feel like the Rockets, a lot of their points tonight came off of our turnovers or our silly mistakes. Like they were in transition for a majority of this game, and we can't stop a team when they get out and they run against us.
Yeah. I know that later in the game there was a stat on the points off turnovers on our end. And I guess they're saying that the Rockets only had 4 in this game, Ethan.
Really?
That doesn't seem right to me.
Mm.
But I have that up here right now, and I guess it only says 4 and it says we had 10.
You know
Um
what? I bet I'm in my mind, and maybe your mind as well, we're qualifying a turnover as just a really bad shot that we
you're
missed.
probably right.
Like, and
Yeah.
that's basically what it is. Like
W-
bad shot. We brick so many threes that that's basically a fast break.
Well, and right, and we're basically giving them a possession because
Hmm.
of a not smart decision. Even if it is a shot, you know, it I totally get what you're saying there for sure. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, moving on to the second quarter, um, 26 to 32, we ended up losing that one. What I wrote down kind of just in what kind of started their run, at least in that at the beginning of that second quarter, was their athleticism and like I said their wherewithal with pace, which just
Hmm.
basically means their awareness on a break. That allowed them to jump out with a run. And I also mentioned that I felt like Amen Thompson coming back for his first game in a while after a couple games in the G League, I felt like he kind of set the tone um, for that pace and defensively when they went on that run, and also the athleticism that I alluded to as well. Another thing I wrote down for the second quarter was once again, Keldon can't buy a three. He was able to get to the 3 shots that he made, I believe, were all in this quarter.
Hmm.
Um,
They were.
and they came at the rim, and then I think he might have got to the foul line later, but he was able to bounce back a little bit. Obviously, that did not ensue for the entire second half, but this is what I have written down, you know, while I'm watching the game for the second quarter. Um, Devin finally, it took until like midway through the second quarter. This is another reason why our offense didn't get going. Devin Vassell did not get a shot until midway through the second quarter.
Yep.
And I think it might have even been later. It might have been like the 4 minute mark. I believe that's when you and I were texting, like, I think he's only got 1 shot or something like that. And then we did see him get going a little bit at the end of that second quarter. Still not as much as you would like. Um, But that kind of ties into another point. I think a couple streams ago, Ethan, not to go too off topic here, somebody asked if we had implemented anything else, from alluding to the scheme and how Pop said we're not really going to run anything this year, at least for, the first, part of the season, it seems like. And I don't think that has changed one bit, because we're not emphasizing we haven't emphasized. I didn't see Devin running off screens that much this game. I really only saw him score in isolation and then maybe trailing in transition. There might have been one set that we had that got him a three on the right wing, and I think that was in the second half. That's popping out in my brain. But
Mhm.
the whole reason I'm bringing this up is like you would ideally on this team. Obviously Wemby, you want to emphasize him as well, but you're going to emphasize Devin. Getting probably the most shots on the team if we're being realistic. And tonight, I know that every game with this team is so different, it kind of feels like, but still, I just felt like that was a giant example of how we really are not emphasizing very much on offense at the moment.
Yeah, ditto. I think when you take a step back and try and look at it from a non-emotional perspective, it's hard to know who to blame.
Yeah,
Like, part of you wants to say, Devin, this is your fourth year, third or fourth year in the league. You need to take charge, demand the ball,
yeah,
and be that guy. But another part of you is like, no, that's not the Spurs way. We're not a selfish team. That's not the style of basketball that we have ever played. Um, is this something we can blame Pop for, or is it simply what we've been saying all year, Jude, which is this whole season is an experiment. They're
yeah,
letting guys play, like you're saying. There's no scheme. Like, this is just the reality that we have to live in, for the remainder of the year, and it is painful. We want to blame somebody. I think as fans, we want to point the finger and say, "Here's the problem," because then
right,
it's easy. We can remove said problem, and suddenly we're back to winning games. I don't think it's that simple of a solution. I agree with you. I want Devin Vassell to be the go-to scorer in my eyes, even before Wemby, at least for the time being. I think Wemby
right,
needs to play off of Devin. They need to be Shaq and Kobe, the two of them. But clearly, it was a struggle, and you got to give Houston credit too, especially in the second quarter. Their defense was really good, especially in the first half of that second quarter. Their interior defense is great. They have a lot of size. I mean, Şengün's not particularly athletic, but he's still difficult to run through. Jabari Smith Jr. is very long. Dylan Brooks is a physical presence. Tari Eason, Jeff Green, like, they have a lot of physical bodies that can kind of cover that paint. And when you're struggling shooting as much as we were tonight, that really, it just opens up it spotlights the flaws that this team has offensively.
totally agree. And I'm realizing when I say this, Ethan, as we're going through the game flow here, this was kind of how I felt in this moment. Devin Vassell ended up taking the most shots on the team. So now I kind of feel
Yeah.
like an idiot. But I think you still get what I'm saying because we were talking about that. Like you told me you had written that down too. Like still, you would expect Devin to get some more shots up, get
Hmm.
his first shot up, in the first quarter at least, not
Yeah.
not almost more than halfway through the second quarter. But the other point that you hit on there when you talked about the experimentation and how that can kind of jumble things, here's a perfect example of that. And it was the next thing I had written down after Devin in the second quarter. And that was that we got Mamu minutes randomly. And it was for like 3 minutes. And then we
Hmm.
took him out. And then Wemby got in foul trouble and we put him in again for a little bit. But like, why are we doing that? Obviously, Zach Collins is going to be the center moving forward. Here's my answer. And I know I don't have the concrete for sure. This is what Pop thinks, but this is my guesstimation, and I think it's pretty accurate. We're playing the small ball Rockets, and this is actually a favorable matchup where we could put Mamu in and get a decent evaluation of him against somebody that he can actually match up with. And we were kind of joking. We were watching the game. You joked. You're like, he came in and locked up, which he did technically. He didn't let Şengün get a shot on him, and he had some possessions in the paint. Um, but regardless of dissecting Mamu's 3 minutes, the point is that is an example of experimentation right there. And it was the next
Hmm.
thing I had written down in the second quarter after Devin.
Yeah, I had Mamu as well written right after after Devin, and then the only other thing I had off after that was, when we actually do play defense, it turns into transition points, and you
Yes.
see the youth and where we can actually be good offensively, which is in transition. And then, of course, Malachi Branham was probably the only real bright spot to this game. 6 for 13 shooting, 13 points. I know it says minus 10 in the box score, but 6 boards, 7 assists. He was
Yes.
really taking charge as like point Malachi, and
Yeah.
he had a couple really impressive passes tonight, and was really commanding the offense. There was one moment particularly where they kind of rolled the ball up the floor, and he was literally telling people where to go.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we have seen a lot this season because we only have one
Excuse me.
true point guard in Trey Jones. So to see somebody like Malachi kind of take that mantle up, it was nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I was thinking of is it just reminded me of the little spurts that we saw last year when Trey was hurt, and also, of course, what we saw in his last, kind of half season there at Ohio State. Like, even
Hmm.
though we knew Malachi was a two, we also knew he was a combo guard. Um, so to see those skills get used more, and it's good to see. It's going to come more naturally than it is to him than it is to Jeremy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what a lot of people want to talk about is the lineups, and we'll get into that. But I don't want to get too far off of game flow.
Yeah.
But I didn't even realize that he had 7 assists tonight. But I did notice, definitely more cleanliness, and just more like I guess, and I know that I've been an advocate for the Sohan thing, so I'm not trying to sit here and be like, oh, now I'm just 100% like on this and don't even care about that anymore, because I did believe in that for sure and advocated for it. But there's just like some basic, I don't know, ball handler things that just come more
Hmm.
natural to him, and it's just because he's a combo guard. I know I'm not being very specific there, but I think you get what I'm saying.
No, for sure. And he was really attacking the rim tonight, aggressive, which is something that we've both kind of harped on in previous games early in the year.
Yeah, for sure. It's only been 2 games, and like I said, we'll get into the lineups a little bit later. But I definitely think that it just seems like this is much cleaner
Agreed.
for sure with Malachi at the start. And I know a lot of people want to talk about Trey, and I know I said we're gonna wait till later, but I'll just get into this because this is kind of the halftime of the game flow, if you will. So we just finished the second quarter. Um, if we start Trey, the issue is that then what are we going to do on the bench? And what we saw, if you put Malachi on the bench, his job is a lot easier because he's surrounded by Jeremy, Keldon, Vassell, and Wembenyama. I don't think that him at point guard off the bench goes as successfully surrounded by the bench guys. Because Trey has experience and has been a point guard his entire life, and probably, as we've mentioned before this season, if we're being real about his ceiling, it probably is a backup point guard. That's why you got to leave him there, because there's just no structure off the
Mm,
bench if you take him out. And I think it has gotten a little bit better with Zach there. Obviously, this game is not the example, but if you go look at the last two, you can see it a little bit more. I just think that those two playing together, they play off of each other better. Zach's not getting bullied as much off the bench. But still, only 1 for 4 and 4 boards tonight, 2 points. So, I mean, I say that,
mm,
like it's better, and we're still having struggles. Tonight is probably not the example for anything, but if you've watched the last 2 games, I think y'all kind of get what I'm saying. But overall, the team is going to have struggles on both rotations regardless.
hmm.
So, and we were talking about that before stream. So, really, at the end of the day, like this season, we can talk about lineups all we want. And I was a big, advocate, and felt like it was, that was going to be a big thing for us moving forward. Not just the point Sohan thing, but like just lineups in general. As we're sitting here now on our franchise worst losing streak, Ethan, I'm realizing how little that matters this season. It really doesn't matter what the lineups are, because at the end of the day, we're gonna we're probably gonna lose anyways. Unfortunately, I mean, we'll get some other wins this season. I'm not saying we're not gonna lose. We're gonna lose out, but I just feel like it's really insignificant because of the
Hmm.
talent and experience gap that the Spurs team has.
Yeah, rotations are important. I don't want to minimize the importance of a rotation, but at the end of the day, it's the same. It's the same 10 to 11 guys that we're playing, and so we're not going to get that much better. Should we suddenly find a lineup that we just play perfectly off of each other? We're still playing the same talent level out there, so it's not going to really change all that much. And I agree with what you said about Trey Jones. I think because he is a natural point guard, he raises the level of the bench guys play more than Malachi would, um, or even Jeremy for that matter. And
Yeah.
Malachi doesn't necessarily need to lift the play of Devin and Keldon because
Right.
they're used to doing it on their own. Um, and that kind of leads me into that third quarter, Jude, because I think Trey Jones actually played a very good third quarter.
Oh yeah.
Offensively and defensively. He had high energy. He was fighting for extra possessions, jumping in passing lanes, getting out in transition, um, doing his best to get into the paint and kick out for open threes. But unfortunately, our guys just couldn't hit threes. Perfect evidence of that was the end of that third quarter. We had a 2-for-1 opportunity, and it was a beautiful play from Trey Jones going the length of the court, getting inside, kicked it out,
Such a
looking
good
like
pass.
prime
Should have been
Chris
an
Paul,
assist.
and wide open corner three, and my boy Julian Champagny off the back iron, no good. So it's things like that that just continue to happen the entire game. We could not buy a shot. But some other points from that third quarter, I thought Wemby looked a little bit better, a little bit more patient, finding his shot in the low post, some mid-range jumpers, some solid hustle to start, but hustle can only take you so far. You still have
Right.
to execute. Victor with an incredible poster. That's another silver lining to this game, I guess.
The
Something
one
we can
good
always
thing from the
remember.
game tonight. Yeah.
That's
We
the
forgot.
only image that I will ever remember.
That's what we will talk about after this game. Going back to Gorilla's comment at the beginning of the
Mhm.
stream, we'll talk about that. Everything else gets thrown in the trash.
But other than those positives that I just mentioned, I mean, this was very much the same thing, but even worse actually, because we only scored 15 points and the Rockets only scored 18 points. So it was just a very, very, very ugly third quarter that I don't want to remember ever again.
There's two things that I'll just want to address that you said earlier, and then I'll get into the third quarter.
Hmm.
First, I still definitely like rotations are very important. That's not what I was trying to say. But I mean, at the same time, I was kind of saying, I was just saying this season, they're less important because
Yeah.
the wins are just not going to come easily, regardless of whatever we do out there. And then the other thing I wanted to say, one last thing on the second quarter, Malachi had a filthy crossover on
Oh,
Alper and Shengun where he
yes.
got his legs to fall. So I guess that's the second thing that we'll
Mhm.
keep from tonight in our memory. Those two highlights, that and then the Wemby dunk in the third quarter. But talking about my third quarter, the first thing I wrote down, cut into the lead, tied it, and then there was an immediate Houston run afterwards. Then I wrote down third quarter pain because that's what the Spurs have experienced this season in the third quarter.
Mhm.
And the worst part is, like you mentioned, the Rockets had an awful third quarter. And we still lost 18-15. Like this is the story of the season, Ethan. Even when we get a chance, like here's another team having an awful third quarter. Even though you're minus 27 throughout the season in fourth quarters, now you're you still you had the perfect opportunity, only 18 points, and we just nope. We're gonna find a way to make it worse,
Ugh.
unfortunately. The other thing I wrote down was Trey Cooking being a pest. That's what you talked about. This is also where Keldon got a lot of his steals in the game.
Mhm.
There were like two back-to-back possessions where he was able to get steals back-to-back, reading Van Vliet. But the worst part about this third quarter, Ethan, listen to this. I don't even want to say it. It's so bad, but listen to it. The Rockets had 8 turnovers in this third quarter. Okay.
Okay.
Guess how many points we got off them?
One.
Literally one free throw. That is what we got off of the 8 turnovers. And the other worst part was, Ethan, they had those 8 turnovers with a minute and 19 left in the third quarter, and they were still up 9.
We just don't have the mental capacity, Jude, to capitalize on opponents' mistakes. It's
No.
infuriating to watch, but again, we are the youngest team in the NBA. As painful as it is to admit, these things are going to happen. Just got to keep reminding ourselves of that. But you would
Remember
hope.
how we Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
I was going to
sorry.
say you would hope that some of our older, more experienced guys could kind of take the mantle there, take it upon themselves to go the extra mile. I'm talking, of course, about Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell, but they went 1 for 18 cumulatively from three. Both of them really struggled. So what can you do?
Ethan, and I'm not saying this to like crap on you or myself or anything, but remember at the beginning of the season when we were doing previews, like there's gonna be no more excuses. We're
Hey,
we're
well,
done with these guys, and I'm not even saying that that's necessarily excuses. Like we're
yeah,
pointing out that they're not playing well. Like,
yeah,
but it's just there's just been such like this has been. It's not a Christmas present, but it's kind of been a Christmas present that is opened, and it's just been a bunch of stuff thrown at us that not necessarily that we didn't expect, but that we're just reminded of when it comes to the league.
yeah. It's a harsh awakening. This is. I think I saw a comment earlier. This is the most competitive the NBA has been, and
Yeah.
the Western Conference
Uh-huh.
specifically. So that is even maximizing our deficiencies even more than they would normally be.
And I think is the biggest flaw. Like when I look back on my preseason prediction, I feel
Mhm,
like it's not us, it's more the rest of the league that I feel like I ignored. That's
mhm.
like when looking at like talking at it to you right now on December 11th, that's really what I'm feeling. But let's get to this fourth and wrap this thing up. So I didn't really have a lot written in the fourth quarter. The final score was 24-20. Houston beat us again. Um, Shetty unfortunately missed Wemby
Yep.
and overthrew Doug on a cross court pass when he could have had Wemby in a post up with Van Vliet at the beginning. And that wasn't the whole story, but that kind of set the tone for the fourth quarter. And the other thing I wrote down was lots of pickpocket steals for the Rockets. That happened throughout the game, but I saw that in some crucial moments there in the fourth quarter, and it was when we were trying to dribble through defenders a lot. But there was also another time where Zach was trying to set up the offense kind of at the free throw line, and
Mhm.
Jabari Smith just got it and then pushed it. It might have been Tari Eason. I know Tari Eason finished the dunk, but one of those two ended up poking it out of his hand. It led to a wide open fast break. And you saw Devin even chase a little bit to try to see if he could maybe get a chase down, and then he was like, "I'm
Alright,
not going
hold
to
up.
foul for no reason." So, what did you have on the fourth quarter?
Well, Doug hit a three at the very first possession. I was like, all right, here we go. I think we narrowed it to 4 point, 4 point game at one point, but like you said, the turnovers just began to pile up, and they extended that lead to I think 9. And then I just put, we cannot narrow a lead to save our lives. Um, Malachi Branham had his first basket of the second half with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. He didn't get a single shot in the third quarter or the first half of the fourth quarter. And he started off really hot in that first half. So I don't know who to blame there, but he needs to get some more shots if he's playing that well in that first half. And then Tari Eason just scoring with so much ease in that fourth quarter. Are you kidding me? Well, we're taking for Ethan and Jude in the 24 draft. I don't think we have our eligibility anymore, but I would surely love to walk across the stage just to shake hands with Adam Silver.
No, we never used it,
Oh,
Ethan.
you're right. We
We
could.
never used it.
Can we go sign up
We're
for
back.
Overtime Elite for a season?
Look, we just no. Wait. Okay. Well, that wouldn't even use any eligibility, Ethan.
You're.
We can just go play overtime elite.
Could we?
Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
I can. Could we?
Yeah. 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 I mean, we could
Hmm.
go try out. I don't think we'd even get a tryout, but
Let's
we
say,
could just go play.
what's an outrageous number of likes, Jude? Like for a YouTube video?
For us
Yeah,
or just
just
in general?
for us.
For us, probably an outrageous amount would be like that's a tough ask there because like are you we could go lower than our subscriber base,
Hmm.
but the thing is like there's still like a chance for you to I guess have more on YouTube. I'm getting into
Yeah,
algorithmic stuff
just give
here.
me just give me a number. Let's go with
Okay,
500.
we'll just go with yeah, 500 is a good one. I don't think we've ever
If
had
we
that.
get to 500 likes on this video, Jude and Ethan will do a vlog of us actually trying out for Overtime Elite.
We got to go to Atlanta, bro.
I'll fly to Atlanta.
Okay, we're going to How about this? We'll go 1,000
A
because
thousand?
if
Okay,
we're
yeah.
doing airfare, we need a little bit more.
Okay,
I
all right.
doubt it's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's not gonna
But
happen
maybe
either way.
we'll make it a little bit more realistic. If on any video in the future for this season, we'll set a cap on it. If any post game this season gets over 1,000 likes, Ethan and I will fly to Atlanta and I will get a Dominic Barlow jersey. And we will do everything we can to try out. And if for some reason we can't, we will at least vlog us like talking to somebody, like trying to get in, trying to try out. And I'll be
Yeah.
like, look, don't you see my Barlow jersey? Like I just wanna rep OTE.
We're huge fans. Please. We're Make-A-Wish kids.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Do we have anything else for the fourth quarter? Did we even really
I
finish
don't. It
that?
was ugly. 20-24, we lost by 4 points in the fourth quarter.
Um yeah, just tough. Just tough. I don't really have anything else to say about that. Ethan, I guess before we wrap up, you know what I do? Let's talk about some positive Spurs news. Let's talk about some Spurs wins. Because you know who has been getting some dubs, Ethan?
Who's that?
The Austin Spurs. The
Uh,
Austin Spurs, baby. And you know who's been balling?
the Big Four now.
Well, see that's very true. That's very true. I'm glad you mentioned that. But who does that consist of?
That would be. I'll start from the top. Not in any
Okay,
order. Blake Wesley. That
right.
would be Sandro Mamukelashvili. That would be
Mm-hmm.
Dominic Barlow. And then, of course, our favorite Chuck Bass.
Oh, absolutely. I actually wanted to start off with Chuck Bass first because he was out tonight because he's in Austin. Um, because he has lost a roster spot, bro. Poor guy, because we changed the lineups. Now he's out of the rotation, so he's just back in Austin. This was the game on Saturday, so this was not the one that Chuck Bass played in. But as you can see, 27 for Blake Wesley, 10 for 14, 3 for 5 overall. Mainly just scoring, but still one of his better games in the G League. My boy Dom Beasy at it again, 26 and 7. You know what it is. And then Sandro Mamukelashvili, 34 and 22, 50% from the field, almost. Well, not no, actually, that's nowhere near 50%. But 5 for 13 from three, and 4 assists and 2 blocks as well.
Mhm.
So shout out to those guys. And then let's go ahead and look at the next game they played, if I can go find it here, because they also played. Oh, wait, no, today is Monday. They did a doubleheader up there against the Texas Legends, and they unfortunately lost, Ethan. But we did get to see Chuck Bass back in the G League with 2 for 2 from three, 50% from the field, 5 assists, 4 blocks, 2 steals, 30 points, 13 boards. And Dom Beasy, it may not be crazy, Ethan, but still lowest scoring total of the season, 18, but had 12, had a block too. And Blake Wesley came back down to earth a little bit. So pain.
You know what I'm noticing right now, Jude, looking at the box score?
What's up?
I am shocked that we're not starting CD Sissoko.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot he was on the team. That's so bad because he's actually on like a real contract. Like he's not even on a two-way.
Yeah.
And we haven't really been playing him that much. Or I think maybe he has been playing, but it's kind of just like been these type of stat lines as you see there at the top of the bench with 21 minutes. And hasn't really stuck out. I saw the Spurs Muse account on Twitter talked about how he had raised his averages from last year. But I
Mm,
believe this is only like the 7th game that he's played in the G League this year. So he's played less than a lot of our other guys, which is interesting. So
mm,
just something to keep an eye on. Another thing, don't forget, Ethan, don't forget that Charles Bediako is a Spur because I forgot.
mm. You can never.
I honestly, the other day I was texting with my friend and I just forgot about CD and Bediako. I'm like, they're actually on the team. And July 26th says, well, he says, where's Sissoko? How's he developing? That's the bigger question. But Bediako also will just randomly disappear too. But then he'll also randomly appear. Like if you go back to one of the first games we played of the season, our starting lineup was Blake, Bediako, CD, Barlow. Who am I forgetting? That's 4. And then there was another person who's like actually on the and Serge Ibaka. That's another thing. Where's Serge Ibaka?
Oh yeah, is he not? He's not even on the box score, is he?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
He
it's
must have
just
been with the real team.
it's so random. Like, I don't know. Yeah, and it might just be that maybe they're like, saving their NBA days for later, so that they're like not. Maybe they just want Barlow and Blake to play together more. Um,
Could be.
but yeah, that actually does kind of have to do with some Spurs news, because it does kind of feel like Bediako, CD, and Serge Ibaka just completely like disappeared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we forgot about them.
Dude, I love July 26 here in the comments just said LMAO forgot about Sir. Can we please start calling him Sir and not Sir Jabari? just Sir.
Sir. Yeah.
It's my guy Sir. I like that.
Sir Rice.
Sir Pump Fake. Sir Pumps a lot. No?
Oh my gosh. No, I love it. I love it. Alrighty. I think that's going to wrap this one up. I hope you guys enjoyed that little Austin Spurs update at the end. As you can see, they did lose yesterday, but they got a dub before that. So, if you ever feel really bad, just go watch the Austin Spurs and it'll make you feel a little bit better. It won't make you feel that much better, but it'll be like they're actually playing guys that like may have there's somebody playing every night. If it's not Barlow, it's Bassey or it's Blake or it's Serge Ibaka or CD. So go check those out and maybe you can witness a technical Spurs win. But we appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight in obviously the worst game of the season so far, at least in watchability rating and definitely for shooting for the Spurs. So hit that like and that subscribe button below to stay updated with everything. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. Because regardless of how long this franchise worst losing streak lasts, Ethan, we're going to be here covering it, talking about the Spurs, doing post games, suffering through it with all of you guys. But we appreciate y'all for real. We'll catch y'all later. Go Spurs, go.